Hello, friends. So good to see you today. I so much appreciate you being with me. We are in the 18th chapter of the book of Revelation. Now, we've talked about in the last, in chapter 17, we begin to talk about the one world religion that was there. And now we're going to begin to look at a little deeper than that. We're going to go into the government, the economic system, and see how the enemy has used that and basically how that's going to be crushed. You know, the whole thing, we're seeing the stronghold of everything that Satan had dominion in being broken during this great tribulation period. That was the thing. If I could retract just a little bit from things I had said in the previous chapters, we can see where Jesus, during the time of temptation, Satan told him, I will give you all these kingdoms. If you'll bow down and worship me, I'll give you all of these kingdoms, for they've been given to me. So it's very clear, and Jesus didn't argue with that. It was very clear that he had dominion. He had control. His root system, so to speak, had been filtered into every part of it until everything had become corrupt. And you can see today how we see such a wickedness that's spread through the financial system, and we also see how it's happened through even world religions. We see the control of the enemy through so many different avenues, and the whole point in this great tribulation period is the fact that God is literally taking the title deed away from him, and he's crushing everything that has any connection to the dominion or the authority that Satan had stolen from Adam, that he had usurped from Adam. So we can see this. So we talked about the religion, a religious system in the last chapter, chapter 17, and how the Antichrist merged out of that. But in this chapter, in 18, we're going to take a look into the world governments, the economic system. We're going to see exactly what's taking place. So let me begin to read here in chapter 18 and verse 1. He said, after this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. Now, this angel is referring to one of the seven angels that was mentioned in the previous chapter. So this is just another one. I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. And with a mighty voice, he shouted, fallen, fallen. He's going to repeat it twice. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. Now, whatever Babylon is here, John sees it. Now, some feel that it's literal. It is a literal place. Some feel it's just maybe a system. Whatever the case was, you know, you could liken it. Those of you that maybe live in America, you could liken it to maybe what we would see in New York, which has been a financial system, or Washington D.C., which has been the hub of the political system that has impacted the entire world. So you can see that there are. He sees it as a literal thing that took place and not just figurative. Now, where it is, we really don't know. But John sees this. And so here's what this angel says. He's shouting out with a loud voice, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons, a haunt for every impure spirit. Think about this. A haunt for every unclean bird. A haunt for every unclean and detestable animal. Everything that you can imagine has found refuge within the framework of this Babylon. Said, for all nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. In other words, the entire globe has been intoxicated with materialism and greed. So all nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her. In other words, many different nations from all over the world came in and merged with her. And the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries. So all of these, again, nations, they were intoxicated by this materialism and by this greed. Well, we certainly can see that today. But then he gives a warning here to escape this judgment. I want you to listen to this. He said, I heard another voice from heaven say, now the verse 4, this is important. I heard another voice from heaven say, come out from her, my people, so that you don't share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. Now, I have to say this again. The great tribulation period, the wrath of God being poured out on this earth is not against people. I've so many times people have said, well, it was because the people were so bad and God's just hitting them hard to make them repent. I assure you, as you look back through history, you're going to find wickedness that's off the scale. I don't think these people here would be any more wicked than anyone else. It's not against people. It's against Satan's dominion and his stronghold over the earth. That stronghold has been through religion, it's been through political, it's been through economics. And he's saying people will have an opportunity to stop aligning themselves with that. In other words, people are going to be saved. Now, you might say, well, I thought that the rapture had already taken place. Oh, absolutely. It's already gone. But you have to understand the believers, they are the hinderer of lawlessness. After they're pulled out of the way, all hell breaks loose because there's no more hindrance to the lawlessness being exposed. But people are going to be saved during this time. The Holy Spirit is still going to be here drawing people, and people are going to be saved. They're going to be going through a terrible time, but the church, as we've known it, is not here. Yet people will still be there and will be saved. And he's saying to them, don't align yourself with this system. Those of you that are here, don't get yourself out of alignment. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of people who have aligned themselves and they curse God. We can see that over the last couple of chapters. Tragedy was what happened, and because they were aligned with this system, this system of greed that Satan has established, they would curse God. But he's telling these people, come out from among them. It's almost like with Lot in Sodom. He's saying, he took him literally. The angel took him by the shirt and drug him out of there. But the people that stayed in there, they fell under the judgment that was going to fall on Sodom. And that's the same way here. The judgment is going to fall on this system. It's going to. But people are still going to be saved. They don't have to align themselves with it. They can separate themselves. Now, to me, I would think that's more of a heart issue. I don't know that that's necessarily just a location. Well, I'm close to something. I think there's something that you do. You align your heart with wickedness. You align yourself with the world system, and you act like them. Say, we have that same commission today. You remember the Bible talks about, he said, come out from among them and be separate and touch not the unclean thing. Can I just tell you this? I worry about people who live like the world. They align themselves in their conduct and their lifestyle. And I just have a question for them. If you are a believer, what do you do in your conduct that's different from the world? I see people living the way they conduct themselves in business. I see their lifestyles that's very closely associated with the wickedness of this world, the greed of this world, the lust of this world. They look just like them. I mean, what's the difference? So could I maybe just interrupt this right now to ask you, what do you do in your conduct that's different from the world? What is it about that? You know, Hebrews chapter 11, it talked about Moses, and it said Moses chose rather to suffer with God's people than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, for a short time. So there's a point where Moses stopped aligning himself with what was there. He wasn't partaking of them. He didn't look like them. He didn't act like them. He didn't talk like them. He didn't drink like them. He didn't behave like them. He withdrew himself from them. So you have to understand that we are called out today to live that same way. I feel like this is a problem with many believers today, is they have aligned themselves with the world system until it contaminates them. If I could go back to what I said concerning Lot in Sodom, it said it says his daily involvement with them vexed his righteous soul. I mean, he came into this city one way, but over a period of time of compromise and of living, it changed him. It vexed him. It was something that affected him and literally brought him to the threshold of destruction. And this is something you're going to have to make the decision today as to how you live. Because I promise you, the judgment that's falling on the world will fall on you if you live by that same thing. Now, I'm not saying God don't love you, but I'm telling you that sin is judged. All of that is judged, and you're going to have to make the decision not to align yourself. And so even in this situation right here, at the close of this tribulation period of time, he is telling these people, come out from among them. Don't be part of them. He said, verse 4, I heard another voice saying, come out of her, my people. So he's not talking to people that are demon possessed as such. He says, my people, come out of her, my people, that you don't share in her sins. So even though God's people, they could be saved, they could be born again, and they're in the middle of this great tribulation period, but the fact is they love God, but yet he's saying, don't be a part, don't align yourself with that system, because you're going to share in her sins. That's what verse 4 said, so that you won't receive any of her plagues. The plagues are coming on them, and you're going to have to make a decision as to whether you're going to partake of the plagues or not by who you align yourself with. And that's just the bottom line. Verse 5 said, for her sins are piled up to heaven. I'm telling you, it's going to fall down like a freight train on top of their head. It says, for her sins have piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she's done. Pour her a double portion from her own cup. God's saying, the thing that you intended to do for them, I'm going to use that very thing on you, only I'm going to double it up. That's what he's saying. Verse 7 said, give her as much torment and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. Because in her heart she boasts, I sit enthroned as queen, and I am not a widow, I will never mourn. There's such arrogance in that entire system. Verse 8 said, therefore, because of that, in one day, her plagues are going to come on and overtake her. Death, mourning, and famine. Can you imagine that? You know what that tells me? When this thing begins to collapse, it's going to happen quickly. It's going to happen very quickly. In one day, her plagues are going to overtake her. Death, mourning, famine, and she's going to be consumed by fire. For mighty is the Lord who judges her. So this judgment is going to fall by the hand of God. God's going to drop judgment on that, because he's not, literally, he's going to consume, he's going to obliterate every root system that Satan has had influence in. It's all going to be consumed. Nothing is going to remain of Lucifer's dominion when this thing is over. Okay? Now, verse 9, let me read this. When the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared her luxuries see this happen, they see the smoke of her burning, they're going to weep and they're going to mourn over her. They're going to think, oh my God, terrified at her torment, they're going to stand aside and they're going to cry, woe, woe to you, great city, you mighty city of Babylon, because in 1 hour your doom has come. Again, it's going to be very swift. And this also feels literal to me. I know a lot of people say, well, this is just a philosophical system that he's talking about that's going to collapse. But this feels more literal and not figurative, because they're watching a city burn in 1 hour. I mean, destruction comes, boom, it happens, and they all stand in amazement. I remember when the Twin Towers fell, back in what we know as 9/11. The whole earth was watching that. The whole earth. I remember Vladimir Putin made a statement because he wasn't aware that it had taken place, and said one of his aides came rushing into him and said, quickly, quickly, come, you've got to see this. And he watched there as the planes went into those buildings and as those twin towers began to collapse. Well, that reminds me of those that are around the world, kings and people that are in authority, are going to stand with amazement at what's taken place, how literally the place is just collapsing and coming down. So these kings are mourning the fact that their commercial industry is collapsing. Verse 11 said the same thing. It said the merchants of the earth, they're going to weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargo anymore. And then he's going to give this list of merchandise. He says, cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen, purple silk, scarlet cloth, every kind of citron wood, articles of every kind made of ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, marble, cargo of cinnamon, of spice, of incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, and olive oil, fine flour, and wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, carriages, and human beings sold as slaves. Wow. So I'm going to think about that. That's all of the merchandise. He said, they will say, the fruit you longed for is gone from you. All of those things that you've trafficked in, all of those things, the fruit you longed for is gone from you. And all the luxury and splendor has vanished, never to be recovered. Never to be recovered. So this is what they lived for. This is what they longed for. I want to encourage you to keep your focus on God as your source and not materialism. Don't allow materialism to gain root in your life. When materialism comes to the place that you start serving it, you're going to abuse people and you'll wander away from what God has for your life. So he said there in verse 15, he said the merchants who sold these things and gained their wealth from her, they're going to stand afar off. They're going to be terrified by the torment. He said they weep and they mourn. Verse 16 said they cry out again, woe, woe to you, great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour such great wealth has been brought to ruin. This is every sea captain and all who travel by ships, the sailors, and all who earn their living from the sea. They're going to stand afar off. And they're going to see the smoke of her burning, and they're going to exclaim, was there ever a city like this great city? They're going to throw dust on their heads, verse 19, with weeping and mourning, weeping over the loss, of course, of materialism. Woe, woe to you, great city, where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. In 1 hour, she has been brought to ruin. So it's going to be something sudden. It's going to be something quick, and it's going to affect the whole world. It's going to be something that all of those who trusted in that, put their trust in that, they're going to be brought into a state of amazement and confusion about what to do. And so he's telling you back earlier in this chapter, come out from that, my people. Don't align yourself with the world system. Get away from it. Separate yourself from that. Now, again, I'm not necessarily saying you got to move to another city, but you need to reflect what you are and not what the world is. You need to align yourself with who God is. You know, we went through that time many years ago where people came up with the saying, WWJD, what would Jesus do? And I think that was a question that people began to ask themselves when they had decisions, when they were put in positions of compromise. What would Jesus do? Well, that usually was answered pretty quickly. People, I can't see Jesus doing this. And I can bring this down to our present day situations. I can't see Jesus hanging out at the bar. I just can't see it. I can't see it. Although Jesus did, he hung out with sinners. He hung out with people that no one else would. So I'm not talking about being legalistic to the point that you go hide in a hole, but you do have to ask yourself, what am I doing that's aligning myself? Because I don't care where Jesus was, he never aligned himself with that system. He never aligned himself. Matter of fact, he separated himself from the religious system of that day. You remember that? I mean, there were times he would talk to the Pharisees, the scribes and Pharisees. He said, "You're a bunch of snakes. I mean, you guys are pitiful." He did not align himself with that. He was separate from it. The Bible says that, come out from among the world, be separate. And I think as we look at this chapter and we try to parlay this over into our life, I'm just telling you, I think there's a point where you come out and there's a distinction between your fragrance and the fragrance of the world. Okay? So, I want to look here at the heaven's response, because now it's going to change as this Babylon has been crushed, as it's been collapsed, never to rise again. And when I look at heaven's response, I begin to really realize how wicked and depraved this Babylon system was. Because verse 20 says, "Rejoice over her, you heavens. Rejoice, you people of God. Rejoice, apostles and prophets, for God has judged her with the judgment that she imposed on you." And really, that's such a, that statement there is a life lesson to me. I think God finds it just that whatever we intend to do to other people, he might allow to come on us. I think our intent and what we do to other people sometimes define the boundaries of what happens in our life. Now, I'm not trying to make a religious statement there, trying to impose anything on you, but I just want you to know that this one here, he said, God has judged Babylon with the judgment she imposed on you. So I think it's important how you respond in your life. I think you need to measure your life all over again and begin to analyze how you treat other people. What are you aligned to? Where do you stand in this situation? You need to stop and make those decisions today. Then, verse 21, this is the finality of Babylon's doom. He said, verse 21, he said, "Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea and said, with such violence, the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again." Wow. The economic center and system will collapse. And verse 22 said, "The music of the harpist, the musicians, pipers, the trumpeters will never be heard in you again. No worker of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of the lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's important people. By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray." You know, materialism becomes very manipulative. And as I look this over, I'm thinking, good gracious, if I could find a city, what if I could find a city that we might call Babylon? I would automatically think, I mean, if I'm just thinking outside the box, I'm thinking of New York City, who literally represents all of those things in music and work and the light of the lamp and the voice of the bridegroom and the merchants and the ships and all of the things. Wow. I mean, that it will be something on that order, and it's going to be powerful. But the fact is, and I love this, he said, your merchants were the world's important people. By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray. What is that magic spell? Well, it's greed. Greed. You know, three root causes of all failure in our life is greed, pride, moral impurity. And greed certainly is at the heart of all of that. And literally, it intoxicated the whole world. And it said, by your magic spell of greed, all the nations were led astray. Materialism becomes very manipulative because greed will set in and you'll get to where you'll use people for your benefit. And that's when you get off track and you lose your way. Then the final verse in this thing, it says, in her was found the blood of the prophets and of God's holy people, of all who have been slaughtered on the earth. Wow, what a way to look at this. Good gracious. Now see, we are now at the close of the great tribulation period. Things are beginning to happen now. And we're going to see in this next chapter how things begin to be drawn into a conclusion. It's not going to be long. It's really not. There's a sense that the Great Tribulation period of time is going to be broken up into two parts, each of them being 3.5 years. And so even if you look at that from 3.5 years, that's not very long. I mean, it's not. It can happen. Boy, it can just happen like that. But you're going to see great, great, great things happen during this latter part. We're going to get into that in the next chapter, okay? I want to say thank you for joining me today. This is a fascinating, absolute fascinating study, and I hope it answers some questions for you, or hopefully that it sparks some questions in you. You know, I cannot be comprehensive as I would like to be in this. All I'm trying to do is in a few moments of time is throw this blanket over this chapter to have you just kind of pick here and there as to what sparks you, hopefully, for your own study. Because that's important. You dig into it and ask God to reveal to you the things that are there. But I love you guys. Thank you for joining me. If you would like more information, you can go to my website, jerryedmond.com. I have a ton of resources that are there that I think will be a blessing to you, okay? I love you guys. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being my friend. That truly is one of the great, great, great treasures of life. And it's unfortunate more people don't realize that. But your friendship is a treasure to me. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next chapter. God bless you. Bye-bye.